So Tiffany said we should go into this.
He's already told half the story in the last video.
We've hinted around it. I didn't tell half the story. I just hinted around a couple things. Yeah. We've mentioned it before. And I really don't want to talk about it because at this point, because I think this is a whole lot deeper and it goes into our circumstance now. Maybe it's a good prelude to our getting disfellowshipped, because it really has to do with trust in the congregation and trusting the elders. Oh man, and it drags in all sorts of other circumstances, the seatbelt issue and whatever else. Anyway.
So maybe I'll start just so you can get your thoughts together. We moved here in 2006, fresh here and excited to start a new life.
Just gotten done with all our date only, marry only, Lord garbage. We got married.
It had been a couple, 2
and we'd gotten things pretty much relatively straightened out. I shouldn't say straightened out.
We were on good terms with people.
And in the congregation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough time had gone by to where they've I don't even know what you call it, you know.
It's like one of the elders said, "You have grown so much spiritually. I'm so proud of you." And we're like,
changed a bit.
I'm the same person as I've always been.
Matter of fact, I still think you're Pharisees going beyond the things written.
Yeah. So, 2006, we're freshly moved here and starting a new life, starting a new congregation, have no idea what to expect in North Dakota.
Never been here before.
No, we didn't check anything out. We just moved here.
Bought the house off eBay.
Yep. And when we were in Idaho, we had purchased we're not going to go into how we got that car, but we had a Honda because we knew that we needed a vehicle that got better gas mileage than like a 70 Mach 1. That's just what we drove. We drove Mustangs. That's all we drove was Mustangs in Idaho. Knowing we were going to be driving 70 miles to the hall in Devil's Lake, we needed a gas mileage car. So we bought this Honda Accord, and it was a gas mileage car. It was nothing special, but it worked. 4-door little car. So. And
we had to build that car before we left.
Yeah.
It was wrecked.
Yeah. And so we did. We fixed it or whatever. So there was a brother that moved over with us because he wanted a fresh start as well. And he wanted my little Honda so bad. That's my dream car. I want the Honda. Okay.
We're like, whatever.
We don't care. We just need a little car that we can drive around that gets gas mileage. So 6 months after we're being here, we moved in here in July, and December.
So we made a deal with that brother, and he knew the background of the car that was wrecked, the whole scenario with it. We made a deal with him. He buys it, but we get to use it to get to meetings for the next, and he was staying with us.
And he lives with us.
Yep.
And until we find the next vehicle.
Because we were just going to find another wrecked car that we could buy and fix up.
Yep. Because we didn't care. Well, yeah.
As long as it got good gas mileage, we didn't care.
Mm-hmm. So the deal was we could still use the vehicle. We'd share this vehicle, basically, until we bought a car. So we're on the hunt. We're looking for a car. We find a car. And it was a 2006, brand new. PT Cruiser, but it had been wrecked. So
mind you, it's 2007 now. So
no, it's 2006.
Is
December of 2006.
Okay, cool.
And that car was a 2006.
Okay, I thought it was a year old.
It only had like
9,000 on it.
Yeah, not very many miles.
Still had the Sirius radio subscription.
Yeah. But the front end was wrecked, so we couldn't drive it. We had to fix the thing.
Light damage, nothing serious.
Mm-hmm.
Took out the wheel bearing and
bumper.
Front bumper and the fender, I think is what it was.
So we buy this thing. Well, we don't have a pickup or a trailer, so we need to borrow one.
That'll go down to how far this is. It's at the southern end of the state.
It was like a 5-6 hour drive for us to go get the thing.
Yeah.
And so I guess if you want to pick up this story now. So we needed a vehicle. We needed a truck and a trailer to go pick up this car because it's not going to drive home. It's wrecked.
And I don't remember how does it just come up through chit chat if I was going to look for a truck to buy?
You know, I don't think so. Remember we were restoring that Trans Am?
There was another brother
there. For that guy?
Yep.
And he said, I don't remember exactly what happened. Like he was up here a couple times. The guy with the truck, the brother with the truck was up here a couple times.
I don't remember.
He had some rust in the bed and some rust in the truck, and you said, well, I can...
Well, but so he mentioned that previously. He wanted us to fix that, mention that just in the side, because we were restoring this other he was not a brother, but he was attending the hall. We've talked about him before, a son of a sister that was in that hall that we ended up helping out. But we were restoring his Trans Am. So anyways, this brother, knowing that we did that, had mentioned fixing the rust on this old Chevy truck. And
it was like a mid 90s Chevy pickup.
Nothing special.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if it was 4-wheel drive. Yeah, it might have been. Whatever. Anyways, I don't know how it came about, but through the grapevine, we needed to go get this car. And I don't remember if I was going to rent a truck or something like that. And he offered to let me use his truck to go down and do this, and we just rent a U-Haul trailer then instead of having to rent a truck and a trailer. We just rent a U-Haul trailer, and that's what we ended up doing. But was a U-Haul trailer, correct?
It was,
so,
yeah.
And this ends up playing into it. But when he said he'd let me use it, I said, and this ends up being important, very important. I said, well, I'm not feeling comfortable using it, but I tell you what, I'll trade you for that body work that you wanted to do you wanted me to do on the truck. You know, fixing that rust that was above the wheel wells. I'll do that for you, you know. Buy a half case of beer or whatever, and we'll fix it together, type of thing. That's the way I usually work with buddies, type of thing, you know. Anyway, and he was an elder, by the way, in the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
So
taking care of the sheep.
That's right. And they had lived here previously, had moved away, and then moved back.
About the same time, just within a few months that we moved here, the July of 2006, they had moved back to North Dakota.
So I think literally in that congregation there were...
I think when we called, there was 9 or 12 people?
Yeah, 9 and then
people.
At this time there would have been us and them. Making it 12 or 13, somewhere around there. So we get in there and we're driving down, and I noticed that the transmission slips a little bit, but it's nothing that's... you know, quite honestly, I wouldn't have even paid much of attention to it if it weren't for what happens on the way back. So we get down there, not really much issue, and we come back. We get outside of Devil's Lake in Minnewacan.
Yeah, we're 20 minutes away.
And did the thing catch fire?
Yeah.
So we're going along, and and there's no temperature gauge on it. We really didn't smell much.
This is December. Yep. It's cold here in December.
And, you know, so when you're driving a car that's heating up, you really don't smell anything because it's so cold. Yeah. Any heat just dissipates really quick. So you're driving along, you don't see smoke, you don't see nothing, you know. And, you know, not that we're going really fast or anything, but we get up there and then we come to a stop sign and then you can see that the smoke is up there. And
you could smell it then because you're stopped. Yep. You know, it's coming up.
And it wasn't even slipping really before that, was it?
I don't think so.
I mean, not any more than it was on the way down.
But we were at a 4-way stop, and I think it was maybe 1/8 of a mile away. There was a little gas station there or a little convenience store, and you're like, I'm gonna go get some tranny fluid. And just try to.
Yeah, but so we jump out, open the hood. It's on fire. But it goes out right away. So what had happened is it boiled out of the top and hit the manifold, and when we stopped. So what happens a lot of times is if it's turning, it's not pumping out, and then when it becomes static, then it boils out the top of the overflow or out of the fill tube and hits the manifold, catches on fire. So it wasn't like the thing went into a blaze or anything, but. It had, gotten hot enough to ignite there. Yeah. So I was close the hood and, look underneath it, the fire goes out. And, it's like, okay, well, now go ahead. So I go and get tranny fluid.
He was like, I need to get some tranny fluid in this thing. It must be low on fluid. Because he could see some dripping. He's like, let's just keep it filled. We'll just go buy a bunch of fluid and we'll just keep it filled and we'll just get back to Devil's Lake.
And I think we put fluid in it. Did I run over to that? Run over there?
Run over? You went and got fluid. You put fluid in it, and I don't think it would move. I think you kept trying to put it in gear, and it wouldn't move. And we're like, well, that's fantastic. Here we are with a trailer. It's the end of December, mid-December, about this time of year.
So we call another brother, and he comes and gets us with his truck. and generally what I'd expect to be a pretty good guy. At least he was at first. And I say this because he was involved as a witness.
He was in our judicial
committee. So that plays in later when we talk about trusting the elders, because he knows of this whole situation intimately.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
and even used this situation in our appeal and judicial. Remember we brought that up?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay.
And they just poo-pooed it. Anyway, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I am.
So he delivers us back home, hooks up the truck, or the trailer, takes us in the car back home. And mind you, again, we just moved here, so we didn't have a whole lot of money. And so the situation...
He must have taken the trailer back for us then, because we had no way of getting the trailer back.
Yep, exactly.
So he takes the trailer back for us.
That elder that came and got it.
We pushed the cruiser off, and then he takes the trailer back to Devil's Lake, and he returns it for us.
Yep. So we get back into the congregation the next Monday or whatever else, thinking, well, maybe it cooled down and the transmission will work again. Nope, it doesn't. It needs a new tranny, or needs another tranny.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's gone, totally gone.
It's like, I guess I'm thinking, it'll cost a couple $100 to find a used tranny in the junkyard. We'll get together over a half case of beer again, and we'll slap this thing in a weekend or whatever it is, right? Now, the circumstance is that brother, everything's all interrelated here. Mm-hmm. The brother that we had sold our Honda to, because he was spiritually weak
and had been inactive,
he's studying with this elder who loaned us the truck.
Yes.
Or traded for the work on the truck. And again, that becomes key later on. So he happens to be sitting on the study when the elder's getting phone calls about the transmission, because he's getting bids on the transmission quotes. So anyways, he comes up to us, the elder does, and he gives us the price of the transmission. I don't remember how much it was, but it was, again, we had just moved here and just spent a good portion of our money buying this
car,
because it took the money that we got from the brother, and because it was a wrecked car, we weren't getting book value out of it, and we took some of our other money and bought this PT Cruiser that was wrecked because it was a near brand new car. It was still, what did we pay for that thing?
We paid $5,000 for it.
I thought it was more than that.
We paid $5,000 for that Cruiser because it was a wrecked car.
So I thought that's what.
And it had a salvage title.
Yep, and so did the Honda. Anyway, however that worked out, it pretty much took what we had for finances to get that vehicle.
So the situation was, we bought the Cruiser, and we had just enough money then to get through winter and then fix the Cruiser. And being a body man, you're not paying like a shop labor. You can buy the parts and do the labor yourself. So we had just enough money to do the Cruiser project and to get through winter. And hopefully we could get more money in the spring, because we were running out of money.
Yeah, we really didn't have a whole bunch of income coming in. Whatever that brother was giving us to restore his Trans Am, and
that was sporadic, because that was just a restoration, a play toy project. It's not like a vehicle he drove all the time.
Right.
So we didn't have, we did not have like a job income coming in. All we were living on was the money that we had from when we moved, and we had enough to get through winter.
Yeah, to sell our house. Then we sold our house, bought this place, the shop, whatever else.
Yeah, set up our life, basically.
Yeah.
So then when this transmission goes out in this truck, and then this elder says, well, here's pretty much the bill. And it's funny because he did all this at a meeting. So it wasn't like they said over the phone, like, oh, here's what it is, or came up and talked about it. Let's go out to dinner. Let's talk about this. There was no conversation. It was literally after the meeting, or before the meeting. I can't recall. I know it was at a meeting. He gives me the receipt, and Chad's like, and I showed him, and I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this?
I'm like, looking at the cost of that, and like I said, I was thinking,
a
couple $100. I can buy that whole truck for that much. I mean, it's like I said, it's a 90s truck, and you got to remember the first of the conversation about that truck was how to fix the rust on it. So it's not like it's this And the truck has how many? What was on it?
I thought it
Oh
was.
no, it's 200,000 miles on this truck, which isn't uncommon out here.
No.
And it had already had the transmission replaced.
And so now
100,000 miles ago.
And so now we're being given this receipt or quote bid or whatever because they're now having that quote or that
They're
now
having it done
that
now.
transmission put in now. And I don't know if it was Chad or it was this other brother that was studying with this guy. Said I thought I was going to be able to see smoke coming out of your pen because I was like writing so fiercely, I was so mad.
Because I just told her, write the check.
He's like, just pay for it. Just
write the check.
Because we keep the peace, kind of thing.
I've always been the point, if there's a debate over money, I'd write the check first and argue the righteousness second. Yeah. When it comes to the point of, if you come to me and you have a dollar bill in your head, it's like, I'll write the check first and argue the dollar signs second. That's the way I always did it with dealing with witnesses.
Yeah.
So anyways. So
I write the check. And
but before that, the guy that, again, was living with us that we sold our Honda to, he was in a study with that elder, and he says, I saw the bids coming in, and the one that he picked was the most expensive one. So he had all those jotted down on a piece of paper, about the transmission, what it's going to cost. And he said he actually took one of those calls while he was in a study, and he said, that's the amount of the most expensive one.
What we paid. That was the most expensive transmission.
The bill that he gave. And this isn't, what's funny is that this situation happened before then. And it shows how if you don't handle a situation, it always comes back again.
Type of situation.
Which is why repentance is necessary for forgiveness. That's why repentance is necessary for forgiveness. This idea of you just forgive is a farce. So what had happened is this elder had borrowed a chainsaw from this elder that had the truck, an old chainsaw. Well, the chainsaw broke, and that elder made the other elder buy him a new one. So here he's got this old chainsaw he loans out, and $50 chainsaw or whatever else, and he's got to go buy him a brand new $300 chainsaw because the old one broke, and the elder, that's what he required out of him. Instead of the elder going, wait a minute, that ain't fair. That's not right. You need to rethink this. That's not, that's not equal for what you loaned to me. We can go out and buy you another used chainsaw. But he has this mind that if he loans you something that's junky and you break it, then he gets to get a brand new one. So that's what he thought with this transmission too. He gets a brand new one instead of just going and getting an equal. Again, you've got a transmission that's got 100,000 miles on it. The truck has 200,000 miles, and because I asked these questions, I said, well, how many you said is this transmission gotten replaced once? Well, yeah. Well, when was it replaced? About 100,000 miles. So you're telling me the transmission has as many miles on it now as when the first transmission was replaced? Seems like, to me, that's about the life of the transmission then. Yeah. So, and then he blamed me for, not turning off the overdrive. And, some of that may have been true, but he didn't tell me to do it. Not every truck needs to have the overdrive turned off when you're towing a stinking little 3,000-pound car. Whatever the case, if that's what he wanted me to do, he should have told me that.
Well, you're a mechanic. That's what they said.
What's that got to do with anything?
He's not a mechanic. He's a body man.
I do know how to turn some wrenches, but
Yeah, we can work on things, but.
Anyway, so then, as you mentioned, they get the truck a week later or whatever it is. They come back and they say, knowing that we're hot about paying this, we're not happy about it at all. It's obvious the tension in the hall. They say, well, the exhaust manifold was cracked too, so that probably happened because of the heat. So they hand us another bill for $350 plus.
So here I'm burning it through another check because I'm so mad.
So mind you that we had just gotten here. We didn't have a whole lot of income coming in. So what we spent to get this cruiser, we wouldn't have had enough to fix the cruiser and live through winter. You still got bills coming up. You've got winter coming up, and we knew it was going to be.
It was hard.
A hard winter.
And it was.
As North Dakota winters are.
And it was one of the worst winters we've had living here.
Yeah, I mean,
we didn't know it was going to be that way, but it just turned out to be.
It was
was
funny
bad.
when we were watching the weather like a hawk before we moved over here, just watching the weather where we were at, watching the weather every day over here, the year we were prepping up to move here. And the coldest it got that winter was minus 18. And we're like, we're at minus 5 in Idaho, so it does get a bit colder there. Well, we get here and it's like minus 35 for 3 months straight. It was insane.
It was very cold.
Matter of fact, I think there was the New York Times came here and did an article and actually interviewed one of the women from here. I think she said, "How do you guys deal with this cold?"
She's just joking around. But they took it seriously, and she's like, well, all we do is put a bag of kitty litter in our trunk and a bottle of hot damn. And I'm like, what are you saying?
It's hilarious,
Okay, back to our story.
Yep. So we write another check of $350.
Yep.
And, we're as quoting Amos and whatever else on how, they're just the religious leaders raping the congregation.
They were fleecing.
So anyways, they knew we were upset. And the other elders knew we were upset. And so, and mind you that it's on the tails of this trust the elders with this seatbelt issue, which we can get into another time because I don't wear my seatbelt, choose not to. I don't necessarily think it saves lives all the time. It saves lives in some instances. It doesn't save lives in others. Just to make a long story short and just to paraphrase the whole scenario, statistics are manipulable, but they'll tell you that 55, and it's gotten higher now with airbags, I will say, but it used to be that seat belts, you have a 55% chance of surviving if you're wearing your seatbelt. So what's the other 45%? So you're telling me the difference between wearing a seatbelt and not wearing a seatbelt is a 5% swing from 50-50? I mean, I can flip a coin and get better odds. And I've known several people that have, I know a guy that got his seatbelt punched through his side and it hurt him. I know another guy who got a seatbelt taken across here and it just totally bruised this, broke his collarbone and whatever else. I had a nurse worked in an emergency room say, I've never had a person die because they weren't wearing their seatbelt. There's always some other mitigating circumstances, but I have had people die because of seatbelts. It's called blunt force trauma, and it happens all the time. In fact, I had pulled a guy out of a vehicle, a truck, and it's right in the bridge right downtown Spokane where, Division crosses Sprague. And I was coming down Division from like the freeway. He was coming along Sprague, heading, that would be towards Coeur d'Alene. That'd be eastbound. And for whatever reason, he wasn't going very fast, 35 or whatever else, but bam, pegged one of the pillars of the bridge dead on, the railroad bridge that goes there. Boom, killed him instantly. I pulled him out of his vehicle. In Seattle, I rolled up on another car. Guy was driving like a madman, not wearing his seatbelt, and he had hit a guardrail. This was one of my cruising days, cruising down on, is it First Avenue down there in downtown Seattle?
I wasn't there.
Anyway.
This is a tangent.
He went sideways, slid sideways, and it was raining out, as it always is in Seattle, and he hit a guardrail, literally ripped the car in half. So, I mean, I pulled over, saw this wreck just happening. I didn't see the wreck, but just happened upon it. And I pulled off to the side of the road and ran back to the wreck, and, pulled off, stopped, backed up a little bit, and then ran back to the wreck. And I'm like looking for the guy. And the car is like wishboned totally in half, and it's only being held together with the guardrail. And I'm looking for the guy, looking for him. There's nobody around. I'm like, well, maybe he walked off. Geez, I don't know. Then some other people show up. I think the cops and the EMT showed up next. Anyways, they found him farther than where I pulled my car back. So he was launched through the window. Well, learned later on, he survived it. He had some serious injuries. I'm not going to say he didn't, internal injuries. I think he broke his back and whatever else. But if he'd been in that car, can you say that he'd lived through that guaranteed? I can't, And the same thing with the guy that had that struck that pole doing only 35 miles per hour. Would he have lived through that? A semi rolled over and I pulled a guy and he was trapped by his seatbelt. I mean, I got all these stories of why I reason the way I do on it. And I don't force it on somebody else, and I don't say I never wear my seatbelt. But what has that got to do with the elders? So they were telling me, well, it's a sanctity of life issue, Chad. How is it a sanctity of life issue when all these other things that I'm talking about? Well, the governments wouldn't make us do anything that was against God's law, because I'm saying, well, if it goes against my conscience, why would I do it? That's breaking my conscience towards God. I think that wearing your seatbelt is a sanctity of life issue. Matter of fact, there's studies that go into how it gives you a false sense of security, which may change your driving habits. Well, the governments would never make us do anything that's against God's law. Well, then what does it mean to obey God as ruler rather than men? See, they never had any answers to these questions. Well, you can just trust us. You can just trust us. And it got to be the pressure was so great. And I'm like, fine, I'll wear my seatbelt, because they had sisters running mics and whatever else. Here there's 12, 13 people in this congregation. You've got a perfectly capable, good brother that can handle mics or do whatever else. And they won't let me touch a microphone or hand out magazines because I won't wear my seatbelt. Mind you, in North Dakota, you don't have to wear your seatbelt in the back seat.
It's not,
it's not against the law. So why are you forcing me to do something that the law doesn't even, so they don't have any of these answers. It's all about, no, but it's our authority. It's what we think you need to do. So if I move to New Hampshire, where they don't have a seatbelt law, because, by the way, they're the only state that doesn't have a seatbelt law. Why? Because they're this big. And they told the government, beat it. We don't need your dollars and cents for our road maintenance. Because that's what the feds want you to do in order to get your money. So there's all sorts of these political issues that go in and whatever else. So you're telling me if I go to New Hampshire that I don't have to wear my seatbelt? Told that to the CO. And he's like, well, I don't know if you have the ability to move to New Hampshire or not, but that's not the point. No, it is the point. The point is you want to go beyond what's written and what's required of the law to make me do something that goes against my conscience. Is my relationship between you? Are you a mediator now between me and God? Or is my relationship toward Jehovah through his son Christ Jesus and what my conscience discerns to be right based on the things that I know and have come to accept? So it's always there. It's always been there. So
I'm going to stop you just for a second. Look how our faces are getting more.
I know, it's because the sun's going down.
Glowy.
Yeah. Nothing we can do about it.
So back to the story. With Devil's Lake, the pressure is getting so much with the seatbelt issue. They want you and I to trust the elders.
Finally,
and I do wear my seatbelt.
That's your choice.
Sometimes, I will be honest and say, when I'm going down the road and I don't see anybody at all, I may or may not have my seatbelt on. If I'm in a city, I may put it on more when I'm traveling like in a bigger area where there's more cars.
Point is, it's a personal choice. You can do what you want. And people say, well, we got to obey the superior authorities. Okay. And so if I get caught without my seatbelt, what do the superior authorities say I have to do? Pay the ticket. So if I pay the ticket, am I obeying the superior authorities? Yes, I am.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, okay. That's
finally,
kind of a tangent.
Yeah, but finally I go, fine, I'll wear my seatbelt. And now then they say, oh, here's the carrot then. We can use you in the congregation. Here's your microphone. And I said, no, I'm not using the mic. I'm not going to do mics. Why not? Because you haven't changed my mind at all. I still think the exact same way. Yeah, but you're wearing your seatbelt. So if I think it's okay to cheat on my wife, it's okay as long as I don't cheat on my wife? That makes absolutely no sense. No, I'm not going to do your mics. Keep your carrots, is what I told them. Anyway, so we're going through this trust issue in the first place. They're trying to convince me we can trust the elders. Then I put out a small olive branch, unbeknownst to me, with a trade involved with this truck. And they're screwing us over with this. These elders are betraying our trust. So they know we're not happy. The elders are understanding this, that we're not happy with the situation. So they probably went to the other elder and say, hey, you might want to go up there and, fix this. So him and his pioneer wife, they're pioneer elders, pioneer couple. He's an elder.
The one that had the truck that we borrowed.
Pioneering for
20 years?
Decades, yeah.
Couple.
And they show up
with literature.
Yeah, with the Insight book to tell us how this is Jehovah's way. And they proceed to read out of the Insight book on how this is Jehovah's way, and if we just accept it, it's more blessing. So it had nothing to do with mitigating the circumstances or whatever else. And it ends with, because we're talking, Tiffany says something about our finances to get through that, to the winter. And that...
The rest of the winter, because it had been, 2-3 months now.
Yep.
Things have
we don't have, we're scraping the bottom to get through winter. And all of a sudden, their eyes are like, uh-oh. And
I think you said something to me like having faith in...
Yeah, but just before that, because I'd mentioned, or you had mentioned our financial situation, they had said, well, we didn't know that you were in a financial situation. And my response was, who cares? What's the difference?
Yeah.
So you'll screw somebody over if they're rich?
Exactly.
So if they're wealthy, then it makes a difference in how granted, you could show mercy in a situation, but what does that have to do with doing what's right or what's just? I'm sorry, our light's changing because of the sun's going down, and so now the light over the top, we should probably put lights behind it, but maybe we can get through this. So you can take advantage of someone because they're wealthy? That's impertinent to me.
That showed a heart condition to me.
Yeah.
They said that, like, you think that's okay?
And that was just like...
I was really upset.
Yep, and I said, and I said, Tiffany, I think I finished that off with Tiffany just needs to have more faith that Jehovah will take care of us.
I think I just got up and left.
You said my faith is fine, and you said, I think then you got up and you were crying.
Yeah, I was upset. I ran.
You said something in the matter of defending your faith, and I wasn't trying to attack her faith, but just that Jehovah will have faith that he'll get us through this, and I don't mean to make that sound like a Jehovah's Witness way. We're very tactile when it comes to our beliefs in Jehovah, the one who causes things to become. You live by his principles and you do what he says. For example, you don't sit on the road with a sign and say, we'll work for food without actually going to go to work for the food, So, because a lot of people will say, Jehovah provided, when really all they're doing is pandering,
It was just a struggle for us financially because we were just freshly here. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have jobs, like a
constant source of income.
Yeah, where you're getting paid every 2 weeks. So we didn't really know what we were going to do because the season can be really... Jobs here can be really seasonal. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Winter doesn't really afford you to do a lot.
When it's 30 below, most people aren't even going outside, much less, Yeah. So a lot of even outside work comes to a halt. Farmers are inside working, for example.
Yeah, or they're south.
Yeah.
They leave.
Vacated the area.
Yeah. So then I got really upset, and I think then you just said, I think you just need to leave to them. Yeah. You just need to get out of here.
So it ended up that we had some meetings with the elders, with him involved and whatever else. And what ended up being, you want to talk about how legalistic it is? Never mind the fact that we've moved here to unassigned territory to do what we can to help. Never mind that somebody in the congregation is taking advantage of somebody else that's come here for that purpose of just doing preaching work in unassigned territory. Never mind all that. It got tied up in legalism in the Insight book. Because it talked about the scriptures that talk about if you've loaned an ass versus versus sold it, or you loaned an ass versus bought it, so it had to do with all that. I don't remember at this time. I probably could if I looked at the scriptures again. But because I had said, we'll trade you doing the work on your rusty old truck, that became an exchange for work as opposed to being borrowed. And so under that legal loophole, the elder was wrong, because our situation, and that's because it was turned out, because that's what they first said to me. They said, well, you borrowed it, and they brought out that circumstances, and this is Jehovah's way, because you borrowed it. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't borrow it. In fact, I told you I'd do your truck, the repair on your truck, in exchange for it. And so it ended up being this legalism debate as opposed to just what's morally right, Geez, like I said, for me, I had no problem with, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry it blew up, but it's not a brand new transmission. So let's go to the junkyard. I'll even buy the tranny for a couple $100, and we'll, like I said, sit around with a half rack of beer and a couple of friends, and we'll throw it in a weekend. What's the big deal? But it ended up being this whole legalistic thing, and the circuit overseer got involved, and because of all that, they asked what I wanted in order to make it right. And I said, well, it would be nice if I had $1,000 back so I could fix this
cruiser, so we could have a car,
so I can buy the parts to fix this car.
And this had gone on for like months and months and months.
Yeah, so here we got this car. We're still sharing this car around, that we had sold. And unbelievable that they just, everything had to be hinged on that legality as opposed to just taking care of what's right, doing what's right to the congregation.
So I think after I think you did get the money back.
He did write me $1,000 check back, and we went and bought the parts, and we were happy with that. That's fine.
We just sort of let it go.
But they never acted like they were addressing the situation, even though it was all very not good. Because this had gone on again for months.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. You wanted to finish what happened.
I was just going to say it was like after a year went by.
Not quite, right? So when did this happen?
Well, this would have happened in like December of 2006. We got the car, the cruiser. And then like the next, I could probably verify with looking at my checkbook from years and years ago, going through like taxes and stuff, but I want to say it was like the next 2 visits of the CO, so maybe a year later.
All I do remember is that it was an assembly.
So then it would have been, yeah, it wouldn't have been that next spring, because that would have been too soon. That would have been way too soon.
It was a long time for all this to develop.
It really stretched out. I think a couple of years went by. And then,
I don't even think it, yeah, I don't know if it was a couple of years, but it was long enough, that's for sure.
Whatever the case, I'm not going to argue about it, but whatever the case, it was a year, 2 years, 2.5 years. The circuit overseer had been involved all the way along. It was the same circuit overseer all the way along, right?
Yep.
And they finally, I don't know what happened in the end. I know our situation with that transmission and defrauding, and the elder got removed as being an elder.
Yeah, so and all this plays
we'll
into
get to
it,
that.
though.
They weren't pioneers, because I was at the assembly the next spring, and she was there, and one of the sisters that was she was a pioneer also. She said, I didn't see you at the pioneer meeting. And the sister that defrauded us, I should say, I don't know if that's right, just started bawling, because it had been, like I said, 20 years she'd served as a pioneer, and now that was just taken from her.
Yeah, so all of that was, it's weird how they'll stretch stuff out and not address it or half address it as they continue to, the wheels of justice spin extremely slowly in Jehovah's Witnesses.
If they wanted to.
Or even if they want to deal with it.
Yeah, sometimes it can be quick, but sometimes it's slow.
Well, I've never experienced it being quick.
It depends on who's in trouble.
Well,
it depends on who's in trouble.
When elders are in trouble is what I mean. So we found out that they'd removed their privileges, their pioneer privileges, and they were dissolving the congregation at the same time.
No, they weren't.
Yes, they were, because he was never announced as removed in the congregation.
I know, and so then was that a fall assembly? It was dissolved in November of whatever year.
It might have been. It might have been. But you got to understand, the announcement for the dissolving does not happen when they dissolve it. So it could have been a spring assembly. They tell you they're going to dissolve it.
They just don't tell anyone.
But because you've got to have meetings, and then they tell you, and the next circuit overseer visit is when he did dissolve it. And we went to Grafton, the very next meeting, which was very interesting how that all weighed out. Because here we're telling him all these things about going beyond the things written, and the circuit overseer and how they're acting and all these things, and he'd pretty much taken our side on a lot of this. So when he ends at the last congregation meeting in Devil's Lake, it's got one flavor all over the place. So I'm going to try to go through this again. I think it was either convention or assembly we went to where we find out their pioneer privileges are removed. Then we go, and there's no announcement, nothing said about them being removed, by the way, in the congregation. And nothing said about him being removed as an elder is mentioned in the congregation, and nothing said to us that they're actually taking care of business, that they're actually doing the right thing. Now, if you do wrong, they're going to tell the congregation all about it. Why? So that way they know it's being handled. The congregation knows it's being handled. I'm sorry, but everybody in the congregation knew what was going on with this situation.
Yeah.
So were they going to tell the congregation that it was, so they'd know it was being handled? No, they totally backburned it and stretched it out. So anyway, the circuit overseer comes, ends the congregation. His last talk, because that's when they decide to dissolve it. After we do the whole voting on it, which is a whole nother joke, because because they're talking about the whole of summer, trying to get the congregation used to this congregation is going to dissolve, because we need to have a meeting about it to raise our hands and do the shuffle, which means nothing in the congregation. And my question as we were going through that, because they asked those questions, well, we have to vote to dissolve the congregation, and they give the means it's Jehovah's direction. And my statement was always, or it's Jehovah's will. It's Jehovah's will to do this. And my statement was, no, it's not Jehovah's will that a congregation is not here to preach the good news. It may be his direction, but it's not his will. His will is that good news reaches all people. Isn't that what we're told? Isn't that what we know to be true? So it may be his direction, but it's not his will. Anyway, so I raised my hand when they're asking, was there any questions about this? And I raised my hand and I said, just for, what happens if we vote not to dissolve the congregation? Oh my God, you should have seen the piercing stares that I got from the elders. And I'm like, what? I'm just asking. What would happen? They didn't know the answer. I've got an inquiring mind. I'd like to know. I wasn't trying to apostate or go against them. I was just wondering what would happen in such a case. Which, by the way, they couldn't answer. But with a little meditation and prayer, Jehovah gave me the answer. The answer is, you would vote as a congregation to dissolve that congregation. However, that entity, the false entity that doesn't mean anything, that just has control over the assets, that would still remain. But the congregation, under Jehovah's Witnesses, which is nothing to do with the assets and the actual building and all that stuff, that would still be the same. They would quit doing meetings there. In other words, they would tell the certain congregation members, you can go here or you can go there, just like they did when they closed it. They said, well, go where you want. They just left the whole congregation high and dry. They just said, well, you can go to Rugby, you can go to Grand Forks, and you can go to Grafton. We're the only ones that went to Grafton. Others went to Rugby, and I think the only ones that went to Grand Forks were that couple
and one other sister,
the elder and his wife, and then another sister. So anyway, you can go wherever you want, but we're not going to send elders there to do talks anymore. So if anybody else would have risen up to do talks, well, then they'd have just been disfellowship for who knows what means. If that were to happen, if the brothers left in the congregation would have risen up and said, well, we're going to go ahead and do this talk and we'll take over the congregation. I don't know how you would legally fight that when the elders are the ones that are sham voted into the position of the offices of the corporation, which is a farce. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the congregation. So if those entities are gone, I don't know how it could ever be robbed back from them. So no one would show up to do talks, basically, because you don't have the keys. And therefore, with no one there, then Watchtower could get rid of the asset. It would just be an empty building and whatever else. But since the congregation, the people that do the voting, would no longer be there, that means that the elders, who are the offices of the corporation, would be the only members of that corporation for a little while, and then they could vote to dissolve the congregation and sell its assets just by themselves. So it's always been a sham. But because of that situation in California with the lawsuit, they took it upon themselves to take possession of the assets, so that way they don't have to go through the whatever rigmarole they can pull. They can just choose to sell it with expediency. Now there's no way to slow the process down, because that's all that you would be doing, is slowing their process down, because they've got so many legal loopholes in there that make the corporation just a dummy. It's a false thing. They say it's there to uphold legalities, but in reality it's not even doing that, because it's all a sham. It's a sham. It's a corporate veil.
Yep. So it was dissolved in, let's see, December, like the end of November, beginning of December of 2009, I think.
And that circuit overseer, again, when he dissolved the congregation, he's all sweet talking the congregation. Oh, it'll be a new leaf type of a thing, and, scriptures on how you carry on the work, and, that type of thing. But what was interesting is we went from the congregation we were in, that talk, to our next congregation in Grafton, and the circuit overseer's visit was there. He scheduled it that way. Mm-hmm. And he went up there, and like I said before, it would have been no less shocking if he went up there, whipped his raincoat back, pulled out 245s and started firing. Do not go beyond things written. Now I don't even remember all the scriptures that come off the top of my head. Being oppressive wolves and whatever else, and all these things. He was just firing like mad.
He pretty much divulged to the congregation in Grafton what had happened in Devil's Lake.
And basically was a warning to the elders to don't do it again.
Yeah, you better watch out, because my eyes are on you people too.
Yeah. And he walked off of that stage and straight up to me, and he says, "Is that better?" And I gave him a hug and said, "That's the one that the circuit needs." Yeah. So they well know the oppression and the reasons why not to trust the congregation. So I don't understand this two-facedness that they pull in this organization. It's unbelievable, because it's like they know or at least some of them know what's right and how to carry that out. And others, Satan's just got, I often said that, you walk into a meeting and the spirits walk in too. And you better believe there's just as many demons sitting here as there is angels. That's what happens in the heavens, ain't it?
Yeah.
The angels walked in, and so Satan walked right in among them in that heavenly meeting with Job. So likewise, why not now that they've been cast down to the earth and we're in their vicinity? So they didn't like that, hearing that there were just as many demons there and whatever else, and we can choose who we're going to anyway. But yeah, they never did announce to the congregation that this elder was removed, or to us. In fact, we didn't find it out until
It'd been a few months or even a couple years later.
Yeah, it was. I think we were out. I happened to be.
Where were we when you told us that?
We were out to eat with another elder. Was present at a get together or whatever else, and an elder had walked up to us and said something about Devil's Lake dissolving, and I said something along, well, at least you guys got another elder out of it, talking about that elder that defrauded us, and he goes, nope.
No.
So he let us know that in fact they didn't reappoint him. So instead of removing him and announcing that he'd been removed as pioneers and announcing they removed an elder, they just drug it all out and then just didn't reappoint him. But I thought it was the new congregation's job to reappoint him. Who's it that gives the recommendation for a new elder to get reappointed? How does that all work again? See, it's funny. It's always been this way with us in being witnesses. I knew the scriptures, and I could go through them quite easily. And yet I'd go to her and I'd go, so how does this work in the congregation? So how would that?
I don't even know. Because they keep changing things, It was even after that situation happened that the circuit overseer would have appointments and deletions among the elder body. They would have to send those records to the branch at that time.
Right.
And the branch makes those decisions.
But
so if they were just trying to save face for this individual, here they just delete them as pioneers without an announcement, and then they delete him as an elder. Don't give him any talks. We're just going to dissolve the congregation, and we'll just kind of sweep it under the rug, and then just don't reappoint him, because you have to send a recommendation letter to the next congregation.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. So who sends the recommendation letter? The secretary does from the previous congregation.
Yeah.
So but with the appointment, the elders are just pawns anyways. But just technically speaking.
Well, technically speaking, there would be no secretary of that corporation anymore. So how would that?
Yeah, but
that's why you're.
But let's say when we went to Grafton, for example, Devil's Lake would have had to send a
recommendation letter.
And who would that come from? The secretary.
Yeah.
Likewise, anybody, like you mentioned, that leaves that congregation. So this elder going to Grand Forks, a letter of recommendation would accompany him. So, but again, the elders are just pawns. They'll do whatever the society branch tells them to do, the circuit overseer tells them to do. And if the circuit overseer says, don't send an appointment to him, that's what the secretary is going to fill out. So I guess that sort of answers that question, but technically.
I don't know.
But just the way that the manipulation of your trust.
This lighting is horrid. I am sorry.
Yeah. The manipulation of your trust of the elders is what they'll turn. They'll always turn that. Or at least the manipulation of trust. When you tell someone you have to trust them, you're putting yourself at all sort of risk of being manipulated. And Watchtower's got to know that by now. But I think that finishes off that experience for now. What do you think?
Yep.
But it does go into some of the issues we have in talking about trust when it comes up in our disfellowshipping. Let's see what Tiffany's up to. Like I said, we haven't videoed in a couple days because we've been so busy, but we painted the stairs and this has all been re-sheetrocked because the refrigerator had come unplugged and so it ruined the sheetrock in here. So we repaired that. I just put a flush mount. What do you call those lights? Anyway, pretty simple, straightforward. We're going to leave the floors for the time being, so that way hopefully the new owners, they can pick what they want for the floor. Why this is all fuzzy. But we've been just going around and fixing small cracks and old houses. The vestibule is finished. I don't know if I've shown the whole thing here, but it turned out really nice. And I also have a chandelier. If this is what controls that light switch, or that light. I don't know why this is fuzzy. There we go. But if that's what controls that light, I'm going to hopefully wire in the, where'd she hide it? There it is. That would be nice in here. It's an antique chandelier. Let's see what Tiff's up to. And this is a beautiful look, by the way. The stained glass with the railing. What are you doing, love?
I'm getting ready to, I'm scraping a little bit of this paint off so that way I can paint these chips and then it doesn't look like chips, you know?
Well, so this is one room we did some repairs in, just in crack repairs. And you can still see them a little bit, but that's just old houses for you.
I'm hoping to be rounded up with all the paint today in here. I just have some pink, a little bit of brown, a little bit of green, a little bit of white. Just, you know, repair the trim basically is what it needs.
Yeah, they're just stuff like this, you know, just the paint flakes. They don't like that. Lenders don't, so. But that's the pink room, and we have a blue room here. Tiffany's got some of her furniture stored in here. Nice little linen closet. Yellow room. We don't really like the way they did this. Actually made it look like there's a cloud on the top by blending the white down, which, I don't know, whatever. In this bathroom, again, it needs a floor. When we redid the plumbing work going all the way up, that had a cast iron pipe that had cracked from floor to ceiling. We replaced that and put in PVC, and so we redid all the plumbing that was cast iron with PVC, but I spilled on the old linoleum and whatever else. So it needs new flooring, but we're not going to do that because, quite honestly, what should be done is to remove this stupid thing, put claw feet back on the tub, and just do the whole floor. And that would be a gorgeous little bathroom update, easy to do. But we're not going to do it until we're going to allow the new owners to do something with that. Same with the floor coverings and whatever else. But this had an ugly mural on the wall. I suppose somebody would have liked it. Little Red Riding Hood, we just painted over it. But we just left it as an accent wall, so it's kind of the light blue and the tan. And this is, again, is a ceiling we had to repair some cracks on and whatever else. But we've got a carpet cleaner coming to clean this floor because we've just made a mess of it walking up and down. But all the sheetrock is finished in here. That's all trimmed in. The sheetrock's done. I've got a couple of lights on order that will semi-match these. Just be flush mount LED up there. Out of the way, simple. That way when I build the ladder, for the pull down, it's just out of the way. Everything's out of the way. We thought about putting like a little chandeliers up there, but it's like, what's the point when we've got these exposed beams, and if you wanted to crawl around up there for something, or you'd just be in the way. Especially since you got to go up and down this ladder to get to the top. But it's kind of neat, the view from up here. Not as good as the top, but then again, that's another 12 feet up there. And a little simple bathroom up here, but yeah, there's the PVC pipe that was cast iron before. And we ran PVC all the way up. So that's that room. But it's kind of neat. It has these little nooks and crannies on either side of the bathroom. I suppose you could have put a bed. That's big enough to put a queen bed in at least. Maybe even a king if it went wall to wall, but I don't think I'd do that personally. We liked it having it set up in the middle of the floor over here. But I think that's all the updates for now. Can you think of anything else that we've done, or this floor we just plan on replacing? I don't know, we might have him clean it or whatever else, but you get spackle and paint everywhere you're painting if you don't lay a drop cloth. But yeah, that's I love that view right there, the stained glass and the stairs. And this is kind of cool. It's the servant's staircase. And so instead of going down to the main staircase, you can go down the servant's staircase. Which, I suppose we can go that way. It just goes to the kitchen and the garage. Trip up my tools, which is just a basic unfinished garage. This is just a little pantry. But yeah, just a basic unfinished garage. But we've got 4 cars stuffed in here, so plenty of room. And the kitchen's not too bad. Where we took out the pipe, we just put up some oak backboard, and we've got some oak trim to put on each side. That way it trims it in, but if you ever need access to it for whatever reason, you don't have to rip holes in the walls. And that's irritating to me. If there's access way, I like to have access way. But it's a somewhat updated kitchen, you know. But oak is sort of timeless, and it sort of matches the original a little bit. So I mean, there's original trim right there, and yet it's a nice transition. It doesn't cause any issues as far as matching. I should try to adjust these pocket doors. They don't slide open the easiest. You gotta lift them up. But they're nice pocket doors. And this could be a multi-purpose room, so you can go into this room, and then there's pocket doors that go into that room as well. And then there's a main door. There's the fireplace. Kind of a neat cast iron. We've never used it. The light's pretty dim there, but let's see if we can change that a little. It's tucked, and we've never untucked it because we didn't want our guests using it or whatever else. But we have a pretty mantle. But this could be a office. It could be we've got it as a bedroom because it does have an attached bath. It could still be a dining room. But if it was a dining room, it wouldn't be to code as a dining room because you can't have an attached bath to a dining room, but you could still do it. We were thinking that perhaps this originally went to the kitchen.
What are you doing?
Oh, just going to walk through.
I gotta get my pink paint.
And maybe it came through like in this area, so that way there's usually a walk into a dining room. We don't know that, but just a guess.
This kitchen was remodeled in what year do you think?
I'd say the 90s. Yeah, that would be what I would say. Well, you know, it's sort of how else do you update a old kitchen, you know? And to me, the oak is about the best way you can do it.
No, but I'm just saying this kitchen's a little dated for. It's not modern, but it's not original, obviously.
Right, but again, how do you match an old house? You know,
Yeah.
only thing that wouldn't be modern. Yeah. Only thing that wouldn't be modern. I mean, these are the exact same cabinets you can get today. The only thing that wouldn't be modern is perhaps these, which again, I think you can get these type of countertops today. All it is a particle board covered with, what do you call that stuff? Whatever. Formica or whatever it is. Anyway. But it's got the, you know, nice little newel along the top, so you can put your little antiques or whatever up there.
Whoever did the wallpaper in this house picks them really beautiful.
Yeah, it's good.
Wallpaper.
It's nice. It's nice. But I think that's about it. I better get back to work. Anything else?
I'm gonna get to work too.
Okay.
Well, I've been working.
Yeah.
Been yakking.
There's a nice little breakfast nook area. We've got a piano in it, but another square baby grand, but it would make a good breakfast nook. These are actually movable. They can go here, or they were probably originally right here, since there is a square that you can see right there where there was probably a post that came down, a pillar. So it made a little breakfast nook, or whatever you want to call it.
Almost like a little mini library, because there's shelves. I don't know if that's original or not, but
No, they aren't. Those aren't original.
if you could mimic the other side.
Yep.
For this side, it'd be kind of a cool little library sitting area, you know?
Yep.
This house has a lot of potential because the rooms are pretty large for an old house, and you know, like there's like a bonus room upstairs on the second floor. You could make this an office. You know, I don't know what you said, but.
So it's Monday again, so I was able to go get some steel. After going to the house, the idea I had isn't going to work, so we had to do some more contraption making. And instead of trying to explain it all now, I'll wait till I'm finished. But the gist of it is, I have to make a fulcrum at the top of this bar and a resting point at the bottom, so that way the longer ladder can lift the longer ladder can lift the shorter upper ladder. Like I said, there's no use trying to explain it. I'll just show you when I'm done, I guess. Okay, so here's the basic layout. I have to have a pipe on the bottom, and then a pipe in the middle, and the rest can be conduit because all they have to do is support the weight. But these two, again, this one's longer because it has to rest, and that one, these two have to be piped because this one will be carrying weight of the lower ladder, and that one will be being rubbed against often as you raise this lower ladder. But again, you'll see as we go along. Okay, time for the latch setup for the next ladder. I just cut a piece of pipe out of it, make this question mark sort of shape, and I'm gonna weld that into there, cut that out and weld it into there. That way it can hook onto here and then slide out easy. See how that works out. So here it is mocked up for a test run. So it'll be able to just come down and snap in. The cords and junk in the way, but that should work. And when you push it back, it should lift right up. So that should work great. And hopefully with leaving the material on it, it gives it some rigidity. I might grind it off a little more, but cap it and weld it up. We'll also weld a piece in here. But that should work.
Chad's been building a ladder for up here, and I think he's just about got it done.
Yep, it is now finished. So this is pretty much how the contraption works, and I could have probably went and bought, you know, an attic ladder from Lowe's or something like that, and I'd have probably still had to modify it anyway, and it wouldn't have looked good, I don't think, because they're attached to a sheet, and it's like, not that I have anything against Lowe's or Home Depot or Menards or whatever, but obviously we spend a lot of time there, but you know, that's just not the way they would have done it back then. They'd have called an artisan or a local craftsman, and he'd have come and they'd have told him what he wanted, and he'd have made something. So that's kind of in that spirit. But this is the way it works. Like I mentioned, that's where that unhooks right there. It'll wear in eventually. This is the most problem I've had with it. Anyway, but usually it just goes right there. When you bring it up, latch it on the top bar very carefully without hitting the ceiling. Lift up. And then these two pistol grip handles hold it. They're operated separately, so that way if one does give way, you still got another cot. And that's what I mean, is everything had to articulate in order to get it to go up here, because it's 102 inches from there to that V, and there's not enough room to stick it flat in here, because I was just going to have it come down flat and do that. But then in order to get it to go up, if you had it at an angle, it hit the ladder rungs. If you're going to beat a code, code is 12 inches. Well, it's 10 to 14 inches for OSHA, but on a house like a fire escape ladder, it's 12, so we just wanted to be safe and be at 12. So that way, everything's to code, articulates, kind of steampunk. It's my Goldman's contraption. But again, all you do is now pull the pistol grip handles. Very carefully lift off the top bar. It latches in. That's it.
How do you feel about it?
I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's neat too. And then you can go up there. Of course, we videoed many times going up the ladder, our little aluminum ladder that we've been climbing up on.
But this is pretty. And again, it's just needs to wear in right there. I could probably hit it with the ground a little bit better, but this will work for me. We have the carpet cleaner coming to take out the stain from when the roof leaked before. So we'll just leave this up now that it's done. That's it.
Great. Perfect. I wonder if we should paint it or do something about it, because I noticed that when I touched it with my hands, that my hands were black from that tubing, you know, that steel.
Yeah, I'll probably POR it. That's pretty the best way I think.
I like it that it's sort of just rough, you know, rustic.
You know what would look cool is if we what's the tannic acid it to where it's like the black acid from where it just takes and turns rust into black.
Mm-hmm.
So we could just rub it down with that or something like that. And then I just ground out these pistol grip kind of handles that were just kind of a little bit of fanciness, nothing too crazy.
They're just lagged in. I don't know if you could see on this side that they just cut off the lag,
Yeah.
So
And
they go all the way
maybe I'll have
through.
to use bolts later, but these are real 2x4s and it's not a whole ton of weight, so.
No,
should
it's
be
actually
fine.
pretty light for what it is being steel. I can lift it pretty simply. I was worried about that, but I don't think it's too heavy.
All of these are out of conduit, except for these obviously aren't. These are square tubing, but these last two,
The rounds.
yep, the last two rounds are actually out of pipe. And the reason, again, I think I said this before, is because they're the ones that are going to be taking most of the abuse, either on the top or the bottom, from latching or from lifting up. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't wait to call the realtor. Show her this.
I need to get that top closed.
And it would be considered an escape, except for your three stories up.
Supposed to rain in a couple days, ain't it?
You want to go down tomorrow night. Tomorrow night I saw rain. It's been really nice out, and the colors are really pretty still. None of our leaves, I shouldn't say none, a lot of our leaves are still on the trees. And I'm grateful for that, because it's been kind of windy the last, I don't know, day or two, so good. You're gonna do another one, huh?
It seems like if it's up here, it grabs more. But if you're down here, it's a little easier. Oh.
Yeah. Good. We decided to put our French furniture on the top floor just to display it, but it's not negotiated with the price of the house. I'm just storing it up here and trying to make this look like a master, because there is a bathroom up here. And then Chad built this ladder that goes up to their top, flat section.
So, a beautiful fall morning. We got our shingles in yesterday, so we went down to Grand Forks and picked them up. So we are going to, I don't know how far we'll get, but we're going to roof today. We'll get these on the front, and then we've got the garage. We loaded it up while we were in here, just used the forklift and hoisted it up to the eave and then loaded the roof last night. So we'll bang this thing on today and hopefully we'll get finished with it.
We've been out here about an hour and a half, and I don't know how many square this is, but we got about 7 to do for the whole roof. So the garage, we went yesterday and got the shingles. I'm gonna have to catch up with him. It could be lots faster if the hose wasn't in the way, but better. It's chilly today. I think when we got here was about 40 degrees, I think. I looked at the thermometer, it was about 40 degrees, so we gotta move fast so we can stay warm. So anyway.